All right. All right, go ahead. Thank you so much. And I just want to say a shout out for Bella, actually. Thank you, Bella, who is helping coordinate panels with me now. And we have a few other volunteers in our audience too. So, woo, Viva La Animación. Okay, go ahead.
Hailey, you
Uh,
want to start off by
yeah,
introducing?
I'll give a little introductory. My name is Hailey Del Rio. I work in video games. I work in the art department. I'm the senior graphic designer. So, what I do is I help make the worlds that everyone plays in. So, if you go into like a fake coffee shop in a video game, I would work on the branding. Or if you're maybe looking at a character, I maybe did the graphic for the t-shirt, or if you're in a castle and you see a rug pattern, I maybe made that rug pattern. So that's kind of like the mass majority of what I do for my day job. Like that's my big thing. But it took a while to get into games. That's not where I started. Um, but yeah, that's kind of like what I do right now. And then
Yeah, my
yeah.
name's Chris Gonzo Gonzalez. I just go by Gonzo though. I'm a lead animator at DreamWorks Animation, and I've been there for almost 7 years now.
Yeah.
And I start out in video games as well, so I have a bit of both worlds in there. And yeah, our journey is not so much your average journey where like we were the I think Haley was the more of the artist person growing up, but I was definitely not that person. I was like not the kid that drew every day. I actually
You
cannot
can't draw
draw at
still.
all. Yeah.
Like
So yeah,
not at
we're
all.
I think we are going to open it up for Q&A soon, but we just kind of wanted to give a little bit about our journey because I think our journey does intertwine, and it's a bit of a unique journey. Haley and I met working at a tech company named Zappos.com. If you don't know, they sell like shoes online and clothing online. It was like when tech was kind of booming. Everyone wanted to work in tech, and it wasn't as crazy as it is now, and like some would say not so good now. And that's where we met, but we both were definitely more on the creative side. I was a videographer, and I did a bit of motion design over there, and Haley did the graphic design, and we worked in their marketing department. Um, and while we were there, Haley wanted to visit CTN, which was at the time that was like what Lightbox is now. CTN was like the animation conference out in Los Angeles, in hopes of meeting Brittany Lee, right, Haley?
Yeah. Yes, I was a big Brittany Lee fan. So if you don't know, she's a visual development artist at Disney. And I was just on Instagram one day and I was following her and she had mentioned CTN in one of her like descriptions. And at the time we lived in Las Vegas. And so we were newly dating and he always likes to make this joke when you're newly dating, you say yes to everything. So I'm like, hey, you want to wake up at 4 a.m. and drive to Los Angeles? Because I want to meet this artist. He's like, of course I do. As soon as we get in the car, I knock out and I fall asleep and I wake up totally fresh and fine. And he's driven me, 6 hours to go see this. But that's kind of how we ended up at CTN that first year. So, yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, of course you say yes at that moment, even though at the time I did not even think about animation. Like I'm older, so I grew up, I was 30 at the time. I grew up with the 2D animation, like Lion King, Aladdin. And so not being able to draw, it was never even in my imagination of possibly being able to do that as a career. But we wanted to support my girlfriend, so I was like, yeah, let's go. And I bought a ticket. And while we were out there, they had a lottery to enter to visit Walt Disney Animation Studios. And that was one thing I did love. I always loved movies, any sort of movie. And so I was like, oh, it'd be awesome to see a film studio. I've never been to one. So we both entered. There was only 25 people being accepted, and we somehow both won the lottery, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Um, and so we get to go on the tour, and I remember the recruiter at the time, I forget their last name, it was Don something, but they were giving us the tour. And at the end of the tour, we got to meet an animator, and they just released Big Hero 6 at the time, and the animator was showing a breakdown of their shots. Their name was Jeffrey Engel, and they showed kind of like the start reference, the blocking all the way up until polish. And it was just like a fun little breakdown showing their process of animation. And there was something in that moment where it clicked for me, where I was like, I can do that and I want to do that. I didn't know that's what animation was now. And so I remember when we left the tour, Haley came up to me saying like, "Oh, what'd you think of the tour?" And the only thing I could say was like, "I want to be an animator." And I really got to figure this out. And Haley was very awesome and supportive and was like, "Cool, let's go talk to schools." Like she realized like there's schools here, you should go talk to them. And so that's what I did. I went over there and talked to every single school. And that's kind of like what changed my journey. And I got into animation mentor, and then I also did my undergrad. And I was looking at art schools, but art schools were very expensive, and I was 30 at the time, and I didn't want to take a lot of debt. Um, but I talked to a school. My friend told me about the school in Utah named BYU, which, if you don't know, is more of a religious school, but they have a top 10 animation program. So I looked into it and I found out you didn't have to be part of the religion to go. You just like had to follow some rules. And I was able to get in after a couple times applying. And then Haley again was being very supportive. I said, "Hey, I want to try to go to Utah and figure this out. I'm gonna quit my job." And Haley, again, without skipping a beat, was like, "Let's do it. Let's just go for it." And so we moved out to Utah. Haley was helping my journey by she started working as a graphic designer out in Utah at one of the tech companies out there, and I just started going to school full time. And then fast forward a little bit, 3 years later, I was graduating, and I had done two internships. One at Warner Brother Games, working on Hogwarts Legacy, and Infinity Ward, working on 2019's Modern Warfare. And luckily, Infinity Ward was able to offer me a position right as I graduated. And we were at that time ready to leave Utah. I remember at first,
I
uh,
was
yeah.
very ready to leave Utah. I grew up in Texas. He grew up in Las Vegas. It's a little bit more culturally diverse. And so when we moved to Utah, we were like, oh, this is really different for us. So we were very ready to go. Granted, I'm going to say this, Utah did not do us bad. We met wonderful people while we lived there. Like, we're still friends with many of the people he ended up going to school with who also work in the animation industry or games industry. And like we did have a wonderful experience there. We just knew that we were ready to move to the next, step. So that was like a big part of our journey. And like I had just reached it. I was like, I need some spice in my food. Can we move somewhere else, please? Kind of thing. And then as he was lucky enough to get a position at Infinity Ward after graduation, so he moved out here. So
Yeah.
um
So we make our move out to LA. I start working, and then this is where like Haley was luckily, this is pre-COVID, but they let her work remote, which was really
yeah.
cool. It was like a little bit of a, oh, okay, we'll let you do that. So Haley got a taste of remote before remote. And this is around when Haley just started looking at things in Los Angeles. So I'm gonna let you talk
Yeah.
about this, Haley. I won't step over you.
Yeah, so once we moved to Los Angeles, I had been working in marketing and tech for maybe 10 years at this point. But I had been wanting to do something a little bit more creative. Design in my head, like graphic design sits in a really unique spot in terms of where it mixes both art and problem solving, right? It's not quite the exact same as like some other more traditional fine arts degrees or fine arts positions. But I had been looking for something else. I had always loved animation. Like it's funny because I joke like I ended up marrying an animator. And I love animation, and I always say I was like I wish I wanted to be an animator, like to learn that skill because I love it so much. But I always just say I'm just way too lazy at this point to like learn that. But I always loved animation and I always wanted to do something a little bit more creative. And so when we moved out here, I just happened to have, I was looking for a job online while I was still working remote at my previous company, just saying, like, oh, what's here in LA? It's a huge city. There's so much amazing art here. There's so many amazing companies, especially if you're into, movies or the film industry, right? It's kind of the mecca for that. And so I was looking around and I happened to see that Naughty Dog, which I knew because I played games growing up, like I loved a lot of their earlier games, like Crash and Jack and Daxter, all those games. I played those all growing up. And then he is a super fan of The Last of Us and Uncharted. So like we had known the company and in games, they often hire in contract kind of position, which is more prevalent kind of across the board now. But at the time, they were looking for a 3-month contract for a graphic designer. And I was just like, I'll just see if this works out. And luckily, we knew someone who knew someone who knew someone who was able to put me in touch with the art director there. And I remember when I went in for my interview, they were just like, hey, this is only a 3-month contract. We're going to need to hire a different graphic designer to finish out the project because we want a lot of different styles. And so I was like, okay, that sounds good. I want to try this. I've never worked in an industry like this. This sounds awesome. So I start at Naughty Dog, which is like one of the best game studios, and I hated it. I thought it was the worst thing ever. Like my first day, it took me like 2 hours to get there because traffic in LA is absolute shite. And I was like crying on my way to work. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna be late, blah, blah, blah. He had to like calm me down as I'm pulling up. Then I get there and they're like, oh, this is what you're gonna be doing. And I'm like, this is not what I thought I would be doing at all. Because I end up working with amazing vendors or additional artists outside of our studio. And so I would be making briefs or talking to them, or, like it was just a completely different experience than what I had come from in tech. And I got scared is really what it was. And so I had my old job still where they're like, oh, you can come back anytime you want, or whatever. And so I went and talked with my boss at Naughty Dog. His name is Eric. I went and talked with him and I was like, hey, thank you so much for this opportunity. After these 3 months, I'm definitely not coming back. Because I was like, oh, this is a huge mistake. I don't know what I was thinking, blah, blah, blah. And so then I end up talking to Gonzo that night, and he's just like, because I'm waxing on poetically about how I want to do something more in entertainment or movies, or like I want to work in sets. I want to do something. He's like, you do realize that's exactly what you're doing. You're just doing it in video games, right? Like there's no different. And I was like, oh, you're you're correct. And so then I had to go back the next day and I was like, "Hey, so just kidding, can I stay?" And my boss, he laughed, and we joke about it now because I've been there almost 8 years. He's like, "Hey, remember when you quit and then took it back?" I'm like, "Yes, I remember when I quit. I took it back." And so like that was like a big part of how I ended up getting there. And like I said, I've been there 8 years, like 4 contracts later, finally made full time, like couple games in. And so that was a big part of how I ended up where I am currently in LA. So, and then while I was doing all of this, Gonzo was also working towards a feature situation. So,
Yeah, so I also want to mention the first 3 months that Haley did that, she was also still working her full-time job at the tech company. She didn't say that, and I think that's so impressive that like to make sure it was that's how nervous we both come from like working class families. Security is a big, I'm sure a lot of you understand like if security is a big thing in your brain, right? So like backup plan for the backup plan. And so Haley was like, I'm going to keep that job. And so I think that added to the stress of like doing something new and then also working full time. And I just remember thinking like, that's so impressive that someone's doing that. So I wanted to throw that out before I talk about my section. Um, but yeah, so like I mentioned before, I always had this big love for movie. I am a huge gamer, so nothing against it, but there's something about movies that I've loved since I've seen Jurassic Park in the theater as a little 7-year-old. Like there's something about that like blew my mind, and I always had a love for it, even though I just didn't know I wanted to work in it. So because of that, I still wanted to try to make my way towards film. And so I worked at Infinity Ward when they hired me. They gave me a 1-year contract. And I was working on it. It was crunched the whole year, which was crazy, like 12 hours a day. But to keep pushing myself because with working in mocap in video games, I feel like it's a little bit easier to get in versus feature animation because of like the polish level that you have to animate at. And so I had to keep kind of working on the side. And I luckily had a mentor from Animation Mentor who also worked at DreamWorks. His name is Sean Sexton. He's one of the heads of animation over there. And he was kind enough to keep mentoring me after I graduated Animation Mentor and keep pushing me. So every weekend I'd be working on these tests after work. Haley was gracious enough to let me have like a Saturday to myself where I can do like 8 hours of animation. And then every 2 weeks I'd meet up with him and he'd give me notes and we just keep pushing. And I applied to DreamWorks like 4 times. and got to know every single time. And I was playing every other studio too. But there was something about Sean that I was learning so much from him that I was like, I want to work with people like that. So that's what kept me going towards DreamWorks. And then I'd say roughly about 10 months into my contract, or maybe more, like maybe almost a year, it was right at the end, because I was starting to apply everywhere. Um, Sean told me about this cycle animation position, and he was like, "This isn't animator. You'll be animating, but on crowds, but it's a way to get your foot in the door." And so I was like, "Okay, like it's not like the ideal position, but I really want to work in film, and I think this would be a great opportunity." So I started building my reel towards that, and I started applying, and I started even talking to Infinity Ward saying, "Hey, like, you know, I'm trying to get into." I'm trying to get staff or like get a more secure job here. So this is an opportunity. I told them I'm starting to apply, just so that they know that like if they want me, they should take me off contract to staff. And unfortunately for them, they kept not doing it, and so I started applying. And then luckily with cycle animation, long story short, I was able to get in there. As a cycle animator, which was amazing because then I was finally in and I was like, I was at the company I really wanted to be at. And then I started as a cycle animator and then I worked as a cycle animator for 2 films, and then I was able to get promoted on Puss in Boots: The Last Wish as animator, which was an amazing film to be promoted on. Like it's also like I'd say one of DreamWorks' only Hispanic films. Some people will bring up Turbo, but it's only the side characters that are like Hispanic characters, and Turbo's eh. So it was nice to be on like the Latin film for DreamWorks as like my first film as an animator. So. Yeah, that's kind of a long story short, but that's kind of our journey into our professional careers as artists, or animation and video games. And yeah, we both worked, like Haley's worked 1 year more than me. I think you're at 8 years and I'm almost at 7 there. So we've been very lucky in this industry that has a lot of contract that we've been able to kind of stay as staff employees there. And I think it comes from, like obviously there is some luck in it. I don't want to take away that it's just pure work ethic, but we both like are very passionate about our jobs and try to push and grind to it. And so, yeah. Like, I feel like our work ethic has helped us throughout there, and also great luck and timing with our situation. But yeah, that's kind of our story. Sorry to just stop abruptly there.
Thank you so much. First of all, it was really inspiring to hear. You said you went back to school at 30, right?
Yeah, at
Yes.
30 is when I was like, you know what? I'm gonna quit my job and try and figure this out. I tried to do it while working, but it's really hard. Animation, you guys know animation's really hard. And so the idea to try to work 40 or more hours a week and then animate was not working for me. And so yeah, at 30 I was like, I'm gonna quit my job and blow up.
I also want to say too, when he quit his job, he was a senior videographer. He was on track to possibly manage the team. They actually asked him if he wanted to be the lead of the team that he was on currently. So like he was at a place where we were pretty comfortable. Like we were looking at even possibly buying a house when we lived in Vegas at the time. Like that kind of thing. But uh we always talked about it. And right, you kind of get this one life, right? And so it felt weird to be like, we didn't have kids at the time, not saying that you can't do with kids or with other obligations, but like we were in our, yeah, he was early 30s, like just turned 30. I was in my mid to late 20s. And so I was like, why not try? Like, why would I want to stifle a possible dream, if we can help try to do this? Like, why not just try? You very rarely hear where people are like super regretful. Then they're like, I tried that thing that I really wanted to do, versus if you always think about that moment when I could have tried, why not? And we were privileged enough to have the opportunity to do that because not everybody is. And so we really thought about it that way as well.
That's great. I honestly think we need to hear more stories about people where they go back to school at quote unquote older, because it's 30 is not old. It's not old at all, but we've been conditioned to believe it is. And so I think we need to hear more stories like that. So thank you so much. That's awesome. Okay, first of all, Haley, did you ever meet Brittany at CTN? I need to know. because
I
that was the
did
whole.
actually. Yeah, no, I did. Actually, it was the year that they put out the Lovely Ladies of Animation book, and so they had like a signing, and so I got the book signed by all of the women who were featured in it, and I also got Glenn Keane to sign it too. So it was
Oh
I
my
know.
gosh.
And it was funny because this man, again, he didn't understand animation, and I was standing there and I was like, "Oh my God, Glenn Keane is standing right next to him." And he's like, "Who's Glenn Keane?" I'm just like, what do you
Who is
mean?
Glenn
Like kind of
Keane?
thing. Now it's like, right, it's like hollowed ground or whatever. But at the time I was like, get him to sign the book. Get him to sign the book, so it was just really funny. But like total like full circle moment for this man over here.
Oh my gosh,
It's
that's amazing to hear. Thank you.
it's
We
really
have some
funny.
questions.
So sorry.
No, you're so good. If you have more to say, feel free to
Oh, I was
interrupt.
just gonna add, it's so funny because like she said, I didn't know who he was, and it was just us three. Like I could have chatted with him, and now every time I've tried to chat with him, everyone just goes to him like a magnet that I've never had the opportunity, and so I'm like, it was my moment, and I messed it up.
Manifesting another one for you in the future.
Hope so.
Um, we just have some questions for you guys from the team, and then we're gonna open it up to an audience Q&A if that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, yeah, so what would you recommend to like student creatives or even non-student creatives who are trying to break into an industry that's always been competitive, but especially so right now? It's no secret that animations and gaming is also in like a really weird spot. So do you have any tips for them?
Yeah, Haley, you want me to start this one off or?
Yeah, you can start it.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, I think what you just said is absolutely correct. It's gotten only more and more competitive, which is like it's always so frustrating as a junior artist because I know my story sounds like a shining star, but there was Haley can attest there was many rejections along that journey that I left out of that story, many emails. Um, so I mean, first and foremost, obviously, like this one should be default in everyone's brain, but your work has to be stellar, right? Like you should all be pushing your work and like trying to match it. Like if you're going for film, watch the latest film and see what they're doing, and your goal is to compare. Like that should be everyone's thing when it comes to work. How do you get as good as that? But the other is, and I think a huge part of this is personality. Is they want to know that they can sit next to you, that they'll trust your work based on what they see, and B, that they are comfortable sitting next to you for 8 to 12 hours a day, right? And the only way they're going to know that is by you networking out to people and trying to communicate and build that personal emotional connection. That I think that is what helped me so much with DreamWorks is that Sean saw how hard I was working that whole year with him while he was mentoring me. So when it came time, he had no problem saying, "I know how hard this guy works. His reel might not be as polished for animator, but if we get him into cycles, he's going to be successful here, right?" But if I was just another reel, I'd be stuck in the thousands of reels, right? Because I'm not joking, the recruiters get thousands of emails that they have to sift through. And so building those connections, like reaching out to me, reaching out to Haley, reaching out to artists, and like trying to chat with them, that's going to help you kind of build a connection. And then when you apply, I say, "Oh yeah, I remember Bella, like their work's awesome. Let's look at their stuff." And that way you kind of get sifted to the top of the list. This doesn't guarantee you a position, but now instead of being in the list of 1,000, you're in the list of like 60 to 100, and that is a big change to be in. And now you're actually being considered for work. Um, what's nice about it, a lot of I would say 5 or 6 years ago, you would also say location is a part of it. But what's nice about today's world is location isn't as important, which is great for like people all over the world. You can work remote. We have remote animators at DreamWorks and remote artists. But I do think like networking is a huge part of it. And I know that can be very intimidating. I think Haley can like attest to that, the intimidation of reaching out to people a little bit more. But like it is good to start building connections and don't like what I'll say this one more hint before I let Haley go into this. Like when you reach out to people, don't just like say, "Here's my reel, look at it." Because like it's always weird when you get reached out to someone by the first time and they're asking for something. Like I said, build a connection. Like reach out to the artists that you actually admire and then just talk to them about stuff like, hey, I'm a huge fan of your stuff. Like, I love these shots or I love this work that you do, and just start a connection there. And then after a few back and forths, which most artists do write back, at least from my experience, I know I try to write back everybody. Like, that's when you say, hey, if you ever have time, I'd love for you to check out my stuff, right? But at least that, again, you've built that emotional connection.
Yeah, just echoing a lot of that because I distinctly remember when I was in school, I had one professor like right before I graduated. It's like I can teach you how to be a really good artist or whatever, but I can't if you're an asshole, I don't care, you know? So it that is like a huge part of it. I know for me, like he said, creating connections can be extremely daunting and intimidating. And like as a woman of color, I work in games, it's extremely male dominated. It can be really hard to find those moments. And oftentimes, I'm sure many people in this room can attest, you have to work a little bit harder. You have to show up a little bit more. It's kind of an unfortunate reality of it, but that just means like you have to be in, you know, the utmost professional. And like I always joke that like me and Gonzo are personality hires, but we also have the stuff to back it up as well. Like we're good at what we do. We that is why we stay around on top of the fact that people like to work with us. And I'm not saying that everyone has to be extremely like I'm not an extroverted person generally or anything like that, but you have to find your strengths and find ways to really amplify those and show that to people, you know. And again, it really is about creating connections. And we've been extremely privileged and lucky that this industry, generally speaking, animation and games to another degree, there's so many kind people that really do want to help. It may take a while, like he said, to get back, because I think he had one time when he was still in school, he reached out to someone and they didn't reach back out until like 8 months later, but they still reached back out, you know? And like, because, you know, the way it works in this industry, sometimes you're crunching really hard and you just don't, and things like that. But I know like I have my job because someone was kind enough to look at my work and present it to someone else. So I do always try to write back to people eventually or jump on a call or those kinds of things. But it is, I think, on top of that, beyond that initial moment, you also have to show up. If you're asking these professionals to give you their time up, you know, to help you, and you're like, hey, look at my work. The next time they see your work, really think about what they said to you and try to utilize that and then show them how you moved or how you tried to push yourself because there it is extremely competitive. And so again, as like I've had other people that I've talked to and I've seen some people's work and it doesn't really change. And so it's hard to like, you know, go to bat for them. And it's like, no, 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 versus other people we've seen, you know, and it's just like, oh, they really listen. They really trying, even if it's not perfect because nothing ever is. But seeing that they're putting in as much because they care about this, because I will say, like working in this industry, one of the best and sometimes worst things is that everybody cares so extremely much about what they're doing. That's why they're here. Like it's so competitive. It's really hard. You put in those hours, but it's because generally everybody wants it to be as good as it possibly can. And so you have to bring that same kind of energy to that, even when you're just applying, which can be draining and hard, but it's where we're at right now. So can't just show up with a suitcase and a dream like back in the day.
Awesome, thank you. And then the other question that we had before audience Q&A was, do you guys ever come to each other for advice if you're stuck on a project or an idea?
Oh, all the time. I jokingly say I'm his at-home animation supervisor. Because of COVID and those kinds of things, obviously we work. Right now we're not in the same room, but we actually used to be in the exact same office. We did it because we had too many meetings overlapping and we're like, shh, be quiet, you know, kind of thing. But we absolutely do. We talk about it. It's been a huge like boon to us to not only be able to like bounce things off each other, but also to have that kind of understanding of like, oh, you're in it for the next however many months or whatever. I get it because I also have that same kind of schedule at times. But I do say he's ruined animation movies now for me because I'm like, ooh, look at that walk or that lip sync isn't nice. Like I would have never thought that. I loved animation, but I never, but now I always joke with him. I was like, oh, you've ruined it. I used to be able to just enjoy them. So
Yeah, I'll say definitely like and this attests to Haley how much she's been doing graphic design versus how much I've done animation. I definitely go to Haley, I think, more than she goes to me. I think Haley's a lot more confident in her decisions versus I'm like, I think every blocking pass, like, unless Haley wants to enjoy the movie, like on Forgotten Island, Haley very much was like, I don't want to see
yeah, I was
anything, so
like,
I
don't
couldn't
show
go to
me
her. But
anything. I'm
like,
so excited.
yeah, but pre that, like on Wild Robot or in Puss in Boots, not that she wasn't excited, but she would help me. I'd be like, hey, like I'm trying to get like how does this feel energy wise? And um Haley is always great at I think because she's seen me start to finish, she's kind of become a student of animation herself. And so like she said, she is like my at-home animation supervisor, and a lot of times I'll be wanting one thing and then she'll like at the end she'll be like, by the way, did you do a lip sync pass yet? And I'm like, no, I haven't. Don't judge it yet. And so it's really funny like how much her eye has been trained for that. Because like again, she's very much confident. And if see something, I'll say something, but sometimes she'll be like, I don't need notes yet because she's a lot
Yeah,
more
I was like, I didn't
confident
ask for
in her
feedback.
yeah. So I think I'm definitely more the one that needs help from her.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. That's so funny. You're in animation supervisor at home. Oh my gosh. Okay. So we're gonna open up to the audience Q&A and I'm gonna pass it off to Adela to read off some of those questions.
Hey, before I get into that, I just want to say thank you. It's been really inspiring to hear you, especially as someone myself who's gone back to an art school after 30. Oh my God. I also felt that feeling of like, it's too late for me. Things like that, or it's everyone's younger. And I'm glad I like you guys, I stuck with it because it ended up being like just another step in the journey, into something better. So I'm gonna read off the first question from Brianna. For Gonzo, how did you prevail through the various cycles of applying and overcoming that repeated rejection up until you required the position?
Yeah, that's a great question. First off, like when you say prevail, I do want to say like there is a lot of depression and frustration from those rejections. I don't want to act like I was like it's bound every rejection's bouncing off me. It is upsetting to get those. Especially how we've all gotten that email. They're like, "Thank you so much for applying to the blah 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 position." Once you read that first sentence, you're like, "We know what's next. We know, unfortunately, is the next word." And that it's like it's such a default reply. And like again, I've seen so numerous of those, and like at first you're like, okay. And luckily, I do think being 30 helped because I had a little bit of like life
Life.
experience with jobs at the time. Like, and I've gotten. Did I? Sorry, Haley, were you gonna say something?
Oh no, I was like, just life. You've lived a little
Yeah,
bit more
like
life.
that helped, but I just want to say before I answer the prevail question, I was depressed and frustrated a lot of the time with this because um Haley knows this. Like I was very lucky at my animation mentor class. We all like grew together, and there was a moment where I decided to stay and finish my undergrad, and then three of my friends decided to finish animation mentor instead, and then they got hired to work on Spider-Verse, and I did not. And that, yeah, I see a few hands go like this, and that is exactly the truth, because that's how I felt. I was like, did I screw myself over with this? Like, I was so bummed. I remember talking to her. I'm like, was this a mistake? Should I have went this route? Like, because that's a lot of the game is like you're hoping you're picking the right way on the fork in the road, and then hopefully that it comes due. And she was like, hey, you wanted your degree. This is part of it. Like, let's just work. And I think a big help for that was Haley. I had a great support system, right? Like Haley was there to like kind of keep me motivated. And because of that, I was like, okay, this person not only supports me, but they've took this risk with me. They're grinding, and that kind of helped me like again, for lack of better terms, prevail, as in like I need to make sure that I can help support us. Because like at that moment, I was like, I want to spend the rest of my life with a person that's willing to do anything for me. So now they're part of my family. We got married during all this, me go as a student. And so I was like, I need to figure out this. And so there was a moment at Infinity Ward where when I was telling them about being staff, where I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna get DreamWorks. And I had to be okay with that. I think that's one thing as a student or as a person applying is like there's nothing wrong with setting the goal to the top studios, right? I know I'm from a privileged state saying this, but like there's also a lot of work at like studios that you might not think are as high on the pedestal, and that's okay because you still get to do art. I think that's the thing to remember, and that was at one point something I was like, okay, like, hey, if I have to stay at Infinity Ward working on a video game, I still get to animate every day, and then I get to come support us at the end of it. And so that was something I had to grow okay with. I was just lucky the timing worked out that DreamWorks made me the offer before I ended up sticking with games because I did give them the option to if you make me staff, I stop applying right now. And they just didn't give it to me. And it wasn't until I got DreamWorks were like, we want to make you staff, and I'm like, I just got the dream company, I'm leaving unless you give me like $1 million or something, which they're not going to do that. So it is. I know that's like a kind of weird, long-winded answer. That's not exactly like this is how you do it, but that's kind of what it is. I had a supporting like family that I wanted to give back to, and so I was willing to just work extra hard and be willing to not necessarily take the exact job I want. And then I do think like life helped me with like being a little bit older and dealing with some of that as well. But again, lots of frustrations, lots of like rejection and being like self-doubt, especially when your friends get the job that you're like Spider-Verse, it's I'm Puerto Rican, Miles is half Puerto Rican. I was like, I'm supposed to work on that movie. Like not those two. Like I should be on that movie. And like that one really hurt. But it's fine now. Like we it works out and again just you know you can work in this field. It just might take you a while to get to the one that you want the most. And that's the best way to go about it.
Wow, thank you. Thank you, Gonzo. That was again very inspiring and I'm sure really heartening to hear for a lot of us here. And Adriana Pontrelli asked, what are the biggest differences in working in design slash animation in video games versus working in TV?
Oh, Haley's luckily worked in both, so I think you should
Yeah.
answer that one.
I mean, I've worked in TV in a teeny tiny way. I got to work on the Last of Us TV show for HBO. They actually used a ton of our assets from the game to keep it true to the heart of what that game and story is about. And I actually got to work on that, but in like larger scopes of how it works within like the pipelines. I've never actually done that. I've only ever worked in games and Gonzo's worked in games and feature, but he hasn't worked in TV, so we don't have as much insight into that per se. um but like trying to think of design in video games or yeah, sorry, I can't speak too much to that. I was like, I do know I have friends that work in TV and stuff like that. I know TV is faster. I know like if you're working in like live action, it's even more different than the animation process is. And I know that there's still it's super contract based and like there's only a few houses that are like still like Titmouse here in LA. They do TV, a lot of TV shows and stuff like that. And you may be on for like that show, but it just depends on if that show gets picked up again or not. Versus games, like I've been lucky enough to get staff, and so the way a lot of games and animation studios work, right, is they'll have like multiple things in the pipeline. So it's like as you're ramping down, the next one's ramping up. And so that's how it's been for me and Gonzo up to this point. So
Yeah, and I'll say to echo what Haley said, it's funny. I think I feel like both of our positions, both in film and games, like we're kind of like the old Hollywood system. If you look at the history of Hollywood, like they used to hire staff everything, including actors, right? Like actors would be tied to a studio and they would keep going from film to film within that studio. And so like Haley, luckily is like that in video games, and I'm lucky like that at DreamWorks. And by video games, Naughty Dog. And so that's one thing that Haley mentioned, that like with film, when it comes to like graphic design and live action, Haley found out very quickly it is like almost like you're doing freelance all the time. Like
Yeah.
you'll be part of the union, but you have to apply for every single film or every TV show. TV shows, it seems like it might be a little nicer if you get on a big one. Like if you were on the beginning of Game of Thrones and they liked you, you probably got to be on the run for Game of Thrones the whole series. But that does eventually end, and then you got to look for a new job. Versus us, like as long as we don't ever get let go, we are like we expect to go on to the next project, right? Well, I can answer a little bit of animation when it comes to games versus film. When it comes to animation principles and like what you're actually doing, there is no difference. You should actually be striving to push to the best quality you can, really understanding the principles like the back of your hand, all 12, and be able to like implement them into any sort of body mechanics or acting performances. The big thing that's different about, I'd say, on the game side is, especially nowadays with like AAA games or any game where you can rotate the character, you have to think about it from 360 degrees. Versus on animation, it's a flat image for the audience, right? Like you can't go watch Wild Robot and see what Roz looks like from the other side of the screen. You're only going to see that flat image. Versus if you're playing The Last of Us and you're running with Ellie, you can face Ellie towards camera, you can face Ellie towards three-quarter, you can do it every so it needs to look good from all angles. So that A is a little bit more work to make sure that the character's always in balance and always has an appealing pose. But then B, it limits how much you can push a pose, right? So it's like a little bit positive and negative in both ways. And then with games, it's also you have to understand how to implement games in game engine. So if games is a route that you might be thinking into, I highly suggest downloading Unreal or any sort of free video game software just to like try and implement your art into the game engine. So when they say, "Hey, have you ever worked in game engine?" you can say, "Yes, I have." Like it doesn't every game probably has their own proprietary software
Yeah.
that they use for it. I
Or
think Naughty Dog
version of
does.
proprietary
Yeah.
software. So there's
Uh,
no expectations to know that. But yeah, like he's saying, speaking in terms of like if you've worked in engine, just even anything is nice to have for sure.
yeah. Those would be the main differences, I think.
Wow, thank you. I just want to say I love The Last of Us and The Wild Robot and the other things you've worked on. I'm like, what? I'm actually speaking to someone who's done these things. That's crazy. I love those games are amazing. So fangirling here. Okay, back to the questions. E. Gonzalez said, well, they're so happy to hear Haley is from Texas. I am also from and based in Texas, so always happy to hear about more folks from the South. Wanted to ask what kind of projects challenge you the most? I've been working in animation for 3 to 4 years, and in my time, some projects are very catered to my skill sets, but there are some that are not always what I'm used to. What kind of projects do you find push you the hardest? Thanks.
Haley, you want to go on
You
this
want to
one
take this
first?
one first?
Okay.
You can go first.
Uh,
I'll go.
yeah, you go for
Oh, me? Okay. Honestly, like our game, like I joke because our games are can be intense and dark, and I don't particularly like gravitate towards that stuff as much all the time. But because one of the things I used to joke about though, in terms of like the type of work that I do, is I used to say I'm like a master of none because I am quite proficient at a lot of things. Like for me, that has been a huge benefit, which is almost the exact opposite of what Gonzo will say. But like for me, but now I just say I'm like a master generalist. So what I like to say is that I'm really good at a lot of different things. I may not be the best of the best at that, but like for what my position and my need is in like the art department where I like have to cover a bunch of different styles of like design or art, that has been what's been very helpful. And I actually took a like a weekend workshop with, if you haven't read her book, it's great. It's called Annie Atkins, and she works in film, but she works with like Wes Anderson and Steven Spielberg, and she's a graphic designer in the film and TV space. And she talks in her workshop, and she has a book as well, and she talks about how like you really are like faking it till you make it kind of vibes, or like you're a master copycat, right? And so you have to like train yourself to be able to like dissect the things you're looking at to then be able to go ahead and do it, right? So like if I'm looking at like in The Last of Us, right? We make like it's this world that's gone through apocalypse, that kind of thing. So when I look at things like, oh, we're in Pittsburgh and this is a bakery, but it's not like, a Starbucks, it's a mom and pop shop. So then I go look at mom and pop shop and it's just learning how to like dissect those different things to be able to understand how to then go and recreate it. I know like that's a big part. So if you work in like any kind of art department or world building type situation, those are like the kinds of questions you try to think about in terms of trying to replicate the real world. So those are some big things. And like I like to dabble in a lot of different things, including like my hobbies or even the art styles, and just like being a consummate student to a degree of just like learning or being interested in those kinds of different techniques or art styles has just been helpful. And that includes like getting out from behind your computer, go walking around. Like I have so many images on my phone where I just take a picture. I was like, "Ooh, look at this dilapidated sign." And then I snap that picture, or going to a museum and something that is not anything like I'm doing, but it can inspire you to, do those kinds of things. And so I think that's a big part of building a good repertoire to be able to move in between different styles versus other projects. And I think one other important thing to talk about is that you can love what you do, but it is still a job. So you kind of also have to think about it that way. Like even if this like project maybe doesn't like speak to you in the same way like, another project does, it's like, hey, I'm hired to do this thing. What can I do to my best ability? Kind of thing. And at the end of the day, you are working for a boss and you can provide as much feedback or be like, hey, I think this could be cool. We could try this, try that. But at the end of the day, they are the ones driving the ship. This is their baby. And I'm just here to try to help and like push this through. Like I'm going to be a willing participant. I'm here to help as much as I can and give my expertise because I have it. But it's also like, okay, you want this? I will try to bring this here for you. And it's like meeting them in that space as well. So.
Yeah. And then when it comes to type, I think what's nice and challenging about DreamWorks is if you look at our films, none of them look the same. And when it comes to animation style wise, right? Like we're not like if you look at Disney, I feel like a lot of those the animation films with the animation movement at least, they can live within the same universe. And that's why like a movie like Wreck-It Ralph 2 works so well when you had literally every franchise they've ever done walking around the internet, right? Because they all move in a very similar way, where that is not what we do at DreamWorks. You can get something very real like How to Train Your Dragon, then you can do something super cartoony like Boss Baby or Ruby Gillman Teenage Kraken, and then get some sort of French / anime style like The Bad Guys. And so you are constantly being challenged at DreamWorks, but I love that because you are, in my opinion, that makes you a very solid animator. If for some reason I ever had to leave DreamWorks, as fortunate as that would be, and like if I went to go work on like a Spider-Verse or a cartoony show at like Sony, I feel very confident tackling that hurdle. Um, but with that does come a lot of challenges. You get what I call animation whiplash or style whiplash, where you'll get off a show that you're so used to doing it. I think Bad Guys is the best example because if you look at the timing and spacing of the Bad Guys movement, it kind of goes away from everything you've kind of learned as a student, where like you're learning to ease out of things and then push like clean spacing, clean arcs. And here it's very much more like comic book holding poses and like that you're really holding those frames for very long and it can be like one frame transitions. And so you're breaking your brain. And if you're on that for a full year and then you go on to something afterwards like The Forgotten Island, which you guys, if you've seen the trailer, you've seen the style of that film. It's a little bit closer to like the Puss in Boots style. It takes a long time to kind of get used to that. I always say you got to give it 2 sequences, which is about 2 months of like getting used to that stuff. So I'd say that is kind of the big hurdle. At least when it comes to film, when it comes to projects, you just kind of like have to get used to the new animation style. What a benefit for me is, and I think this comes from me loving video games, is I like challenges like that. I really love puzzles. And animation to me is like a puzzle. It's like this, you come with this blank slate and you have to start putting little pieces together in hopes of getting the director's vision correctly. And there's nothing more satisfying than putting that last piece in the puzzle to me. And so like when I finally get the final from the director, that's the feeling I get. And so it is like this, I'd say like this 70% of anxiety, can I finish this? And that 30% of like, yay, I did it and I feel happy and let's start another one. So I guess those are the big challenges when it comes to projects for me.
Can I add, and I don't know why E didn't share this, but E just started at DreamWorks just recently
Hey,
as a biz dev person, artist.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't want to like
E,
be weird about it.
E, you know, it's
we
But
should
no,
have E in
yeah,
this panel.
yeah. Hi, my name is E. I do biz dev in animation. I work for DreamWorks right now as well. And I find what you're saying very true about like the project whiplash, because like I feel like sometimes I can like pinpoint exactly like what piece in my portfolio where they were like, oh, I think it would be a good fit for whatever. But for the project that I'm on right now, I work in TV production. So I'm doing biz
Awesome.
dev for that. So for this project, I was like, oh my God, this is like kind of not really what I'm used to, like the style that they have. Obviously, they trust me enough, so I'm like, oh my God, okay. So I guess that's like why I asked like the question. But I mean, good answer. Glad to know I'm not by myself.
Yeah, I
But
know.
yeah,
That's awesome. First off,
yeah.
congratulations. I think you reached
Thank
out to
you.
me actually.
Yeah, I did. I wanted to
Yeah,
say hi. I've been trying to like make my rounds. Everybody's been so nice. And it's so nice to connect with, the community, especially like the Latin community. And Haley's from Texas, so that made me very happy. I feel like a very full circle moment. Um, yeah, but yeah, so glad to be here. Thank y'all for coming. And yeah, just hi. Just wanted to say hi. That's it.
awesome. Great to
So
meet you
excited. Thank
officially,
you.
E. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, and I just want to say he's been one of our really long time VLA members since kind of the very beginning, and it's amazing to see them kind of we were sorry when they were very freelance, I think, working on these short film projects, and I think they have one of their short film projects right now. Asia? I don't
Yeah, it's
sorry.
overseas. Oh my God, Adela, please, you make
I, I,
me like
I just
promo
want
like
to, it's
everything.
like beautiful to see
Amazing.
like members kind of blossoming, and it was such a big deal for us to like really celebrate. Look, they're at DreamWorks now, making their way. So just shout out.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Adela.
Yeah, to the
Wow. Thank
VLA
you.
members.
I
Yeah.
feel sheepish. Thank
No, you're
No,
you.
good.
yeah.
Yeah.
Embrace
I
it.
have a
That's
film.
great.
Yeah, I have a film called Scopaesthesia. It's coming out probably. I mean, we're finishing it this year, but public release may be a different story. But this is about me. Please continue.
Of course. Thank you, E. And we
Thank
have
you. Thank you.
of course, and we have a question from Adriana Hernandez. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for hosting the event and for sharing your story. It's very inspiring to hear about your journey. Have you ever been given a shot that felt overwhelming at first? How did you break it down? What advice would you give to students would you give to students when they encounter a shot and don't know where to begin? Thank you so much.
Uh, yeah, Haley, you want me to start with this one? Because I feel like I'm the one
This
that
is
gets.
for you. I don't do shots, so yes, you can take this one.
The answer is yeah, every shot. I am not joking. I kind of said this in the last question, but like every shot I get is overwhelming to me because again, it's like starting with a blank piece of paper, right? I go through like these phases where like they tell me what shots I'm getting and I look at them and I get excited. What's nice about I've been at DreamWorks long enough now that I can kind of request shots and I'll usually get them, which is really exciting. But then you have to do it, right? It's like, and then now that's when my anxiety just starts kicking in. Like, it's like that, you have like the two versions, the evil and the, the good person of yourself. And like, well, the evil one's like, you probably can't do it. You're probably gonna fail and everyone's gonna see this. And then I'm trying to let the good one say like, no, no, like you're gonna be fine. But that's your anxiety kicking in. Um, but yeah, I think every shot is overwhelming, but I definitely have ones that I think like stand out more. And for me, if you look kind of at my portfolio, at least you'll see there's a lot of action. I get a lot of like big mechanics, big action shots, and I think I don't know why, but that stuff kind of clicks a little bit more in my brain. Where like, I have a shot in a big oneer in Kung Fu Panda 4 where Zhen is like flying around this tavern fighting all these wolves and pigs, and there's something about that that made sense to me, and I think that's why I got shots like that. They're like, oh, Gonzo's going to be able to handle these intense shots that are like hard to do, but like they just make I can see it in my brain a little bit better. And so one thing that I've been doing is as much as it's fun to animate those shots and I really do love the action, I want to be a very well-rounded animator where I can take on anything that they throw at me. So the last couple of films I've been asking more for acting. I was like, hey, I'd love to try the more emotional beats, like I want to get some comedy, I want to get some sadness and like try to get some things that like make, just more subtle things because that's something that I have to push for to get really good at. And I've been lucky that they give it to me, but I've had some shots where like it's very challenging to like get working. I unfortunately can't talk about some of the stuff I worked on like on uh the Forgotten Island because like I luckily I was a lead, so I had a few characters that I was the lead of, but I can't say who they are yet. But on a good example is like on the bad guys, I had this moment where Wolf is talking to Kitty. And Wolf, if you haven't seen the bad guys part two, they're good guys now, right? And so Wolf is going through this moment in his head where like it's really hard to do the right thing and he sees working with Kitty, who's still a bad guy, is like, I can have it all again so easily because I'm so good at this. And he's kind of going through this moment in his head where it's like, do I just want to go back and have it as smooth as it was, or do I want to do the right thing? And like, even though it's a bigger challenge for it, and they're both just sitting talking to each other, and to me that I had to shoot way more reference and like really think about that, and that's the stuff that really challenges me and I'm trying to get better at. That's like my hands, right? You hear artists say like I can't draw hands, like that's my hands. It's I can't like again, it doesn't like sitting in one pose and making the character feel alive. It can be really hard to do. So those are the ones that like I've been asking more because I think the more you do it, the better you'll get at, and those are the ones that have been really challenging for me. But luckily, you have a great supporting team there, and that's kind of how I've been going about it. Like if you're a student or if you're a professional, like depend on your community around you. I luckily sit next to some of the best animators in the world, so it's a lot easier for me. But when I was a student, like I mentioned, like I had my friends Laura Han and Mikey Wong that were with me in classes, and we would have our normal Q&A in class, and then after class we would do our own thing just like this where I would show my work and Mikey and Laura would like rip it apart in a positive way, but they'd be like, you should do this, you should do that. And I would do the same thing for them. I think those are the things like it's honestly animation, at least when it comes to character animation. I imagine illustration, concept art, texturing, any sort of thing within the animation pipeline, I think is in the same realm where it's like lifting weights. It is a bit more of a repetitive thing. Like if you're trying to lift 300 pounds, it's really heavy. You might not be able to do it at the beginning. Eventually, you're able to do it, but it's still 300 pounds, right? So it's always going to be a bit daunting. That 300 pounds never gets less. It just gets a little bit, you get better at lifting that thing. And you're only going to be doing that by repetition and getting like constant feedback. So that's kind of like a long-winded answer to that question.
Thank you. And I have a couple questions, but first we have a question by Ermi Ruiz. Hello, with the DreamWorks internships opening up soon, do you have any tips for people applying? Thank you so much for speaking to us today and sharing your stories and wisdom.
Yeah, absolutely. So the internships are a bit weird when it comes to I always like to say this right away when it comes to there's one that says animation internship. It's not an actual animator one. You're actually on the production team with animation. You'll be on a film on the animation team, but you're doing production. So I always like to warn students about that because sometimes they read it, it's kind of written in the wrong way where you think you're animating. But because of the way DreamWorks works, we're very fast that we don't actually have an animation intern. It's just you're in the production part. Um, but as for standing out, it's one of those ones that I think it's one of the only positions where like I guess your portfolio isn't the most important. You also like they want to see like how maybe active you are in your community and school. I think this would be an awesome thing to put on your resume that you're part of this community, and that you do things like help bring Latin artists up and like are supporting that. I think that would be great. I don't know if they worry about GPA. They shouldn't, because I don't think it matters in the long run when it comes to art. So hopefully that's not the case. But definitely, like applying for any sort of internship, definitely put your portfolio in there. Show that you're passionate about, like, make them feel like you're passionate about DreamWorks specifically, right? Like, why do you want to work there versus any other studio in the world? And like, so having that backup, like, oh, like I like these movies, and if you have some art, maybe some art that caters towards that studio specifically. And then of course I think community and like what you do around there is going to help stand out because you're going to be they put the interns together and they try to like help build a community of internship interns that like do stuff together. And the goal is to hopefully hire you on at the end of it. Haley, I don't know if like does Naughty Dog do like an internship type thing?
We
Yeah,
don't have internships.
yeah.
No.
I know
No, there's
it. Good.
oh, go ahead. Oh no, I was just gonna say I know there's lots of companies that do. I mean, I think for most internships, it's so hard to stand out. And like we've said, it is very competitive, those kinds of things. Again, I would point back to networking, looking at, people like that work within maybe the recruiting departments, reach out to them, trying to create those relationships with people is what's really important because again, you're going up against thousands of other people that are also want this and need this. And it's like, okay, what's unique about me? How can I show them how serious I am without being there? That's one of it, is like following back up, showing them over and over. Like when he was applying at places, he would reach out to the same recruiters, like over and over, and sometimes they were moving companies. I think even one of them was at DreamWorks prior, then she ended up moving to Sony Santa Monica and she's like, "Hey, we're hiring at Sony Santa Monica." Like so it's really important to be engaged with the community that is the one you want to be a part of. Like that is huge.
Thank you so much. And I think unless anyone else has any final questions, I have a couple of my own, one for each of you. So, Haley, oh, no, it's okay. We'll talk. Let me ask mine and then we'll get to you, Jeff, just a second because I have it ready. Haley, I have one for you and one for Gonzo. I love video games. I've played them my entire life since the Super Nintendo and stuff like that. But I think I don't understand, I guess. Do you, for as a visual designer, correct? That's your title? Is that
Yeah, visual graphics.
so what
Yeah.
is your day-to-day like? Like, are you constantly making like backgrounds or props like for video games? Like, what is that like? Because I love it,
So
but
yeah, so we have like what's nice is, depending on your studio, it can really depend. Like I work at Naughty Dog. It's one of the best game studios in the world. Like no, like it truly is. Like they make some amazing pieces of art, right? And so we're lucky enough to have teams that are dedicated. Like I'm technically on our background or art department, but underneath our art department, that includes background artists. So that could be modelers and texture artists, lighters, um, FX artists. Like there's all these different departments. And so like I work with mostly within the art department, but I also work with foreground and character. And so what that looks like day to day is like we have our tasks that we do. I go to lots of meetings about levels that we're working on, things like that. And I work primarily with texture artists. And so they're the ones that make, the table feel like wood or, that box feel like metal. But then they're like, hey, I need a logo or I need a pattern. And then we'll talk about that. I work with my art director very closely. Maybe there's paintings in the game, and so I handle that. I may not do them myself, but then I work with extremely talented vendors or outsource artists, and I write up what we need. I give feedback, things like that. Same thing with our prop artists. Like we'll have a 3D artist who may render that, and then I work with that or our concept team because we have two distinctive teams at Naughty Dog where we have an environment concept team and we have a character concept team. And so like I may go and talk with our, character concept lead and be like, hey, I noticed there's some patterns on this, design, do you have that? Do you need me to support in that way? And so then I'll take that concept and then I'll make the final art that ends up going into game. And then on top of that, I work with our legal team a lot too. That's a big part of my job is like, hey, making sure that whatever reference or thing that we were looking at, like how are we making this unique and special to us, those kinds of things. So that's my day-to-day shifts depending on what team I'm focusing on. But yeah, that's kind of like the big part about it. Like again, I work with some of the most talented artists in the industry, so I'm very lucky in that respect. But yeah, it can shift. I work with a ton of different people, like day to day, talking to between, some days it's maybe only two people, some days it's 30 people. It's pretty crazy. So
Well, thank you. I got a little lesson in the pipeline. Thank you. I had no idea all of that went into it, so appreciate
yeah,
it.
it's a really big machine. And it's just again what I said earlier, it's really nice because most people that work in the machine though all really, really care about what they're doing and they just want to make the best possible art that they can.
Mhm. Thank you, Haley. And for Gonzo, because we have two more questions after mine. Thank you for being with us. Gonzo, there was a comment that you made about, I think you had they were like, oh, it's a crowds animator. I know it's not like character animator, but it's crowds. It could get your foot in the door. If you can talk a little bit about that, because I know a lot of us are like, oh, no, we want to be like this thing specifically, but then we have to kind of get there. And I've seen the title crowds animator a lot, and I'm like, what is that and stuff. I don't do it myself, but if you can talk maybe like psychologically, like were you like, oh no, I don't want to be crowds, or how was that for you?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, just so you know, it definitely was that. Like when you hear crowds, you're like, everyone wants to do the hero character, right? Everyone wants to animate the big character and do the big performances, and you see all this stuff. But with crowds is like you are still animating. It is just the background characters, so you're doing lots of cycles, lots of walk cycles, run cycles. Um, Depending on the film, you'll just be doing like you think about what the crowds would do in that world, and it's actually very important. So it's nice that you have that. But at least when it comes to DreamWorks, it is set up as the junior position, and they assume that you want to move on there, which is great. But it was like when I got there, it was like, okay, I'm leaving. I was doing like senior level work at Infinity Ward. Like they were giving me a lot of um freedom,
Responsibility.
responsibility, and it's kind of a dark thing to say, but I was known as like the stab guy. It's a war video game, and I would do a lot of stabbings, and I was also known for the guy that would keyframe things, even though it was mocap. I'd actually get talked to sometimes, like, you're keyframing too much. And I was like, this is the fun part. Of course I'm going to keyframe. But because of that, I would get a lot of stabbings because I would make it very violent and feel like it. And I was getting all that. And there was the possibility of me going staff. And I was like, okay, I'm going to leave this for a very junior position here. And so it was this thing like, okay, it's a step down, but it is a step forward towards the goal. Haley and I remember we watched this talk back in the day. It's about like every journey, every direction of your journey should be towards your mountain, right? You're hiking towards this mountain. That's basically your journey, and every step should be towards that, no matter what you do. And even though it was cycles and crowds, and I wasn't getting to do the hero things and I was going to have to start over at a new company, I was like, it's still in the right direction to me one day being an animator in a film company at DreamWorks specifically, right? And so even though it was like a step down, I was like, no, I get to work on movies. And very quickly I found out, oh, I'm still keyframe. I'm doing keyframe, which I love. I'm doing animating. And I think because of like me just taking it on as I took it as serious as like animating Roz. Like I was like this background grandpa in the that no one's gonna see. I'm gonna animate it like the best background grandpa you can think of, and because of that, I think they saw that work ethic, and I was able to like progress fairly quickly in my opinion. Like on my first film was Boss Baby 2. And on the last 3 months of that film, they bumped me up to animation temporarily to help get finish the film because it got so busy. And not every crowd's animator got to do that. I think it's because I was putting that effort. So even though, again, the psychological part of it is like I'm doing less than, like you should still treat that simple walk cycle like it's the best thing anyone's gonna see because that's what makes you stand out at a company, right? Like I always tell students like you're gonna be excited to animate to do all these fun, cool things like because you're looking at my reel and you see this kung fu stuff or these crazy driving shots from bad guys. But my very first shot was this a head turn. That's all it was. Like they were like, here's your first shot when they bumped me up on Boss Baby. It was a character turning their head towards kids running. And I remember I was like telling Haley, I was like, this is gonna look great. Like I was tracking the arc of that nose, getting some overlap on the face because the character like I went through every muscle control. And it was I like took my time and did that. And again, that's what kind of show I think they saw that I just loved animating and having fun with it. And I was like, this is gonna be on screen. Like I was like, this is my moment to shine. This small little 18 frame shot is gonna be on the big screen. Everyone's gonna see it. And I think because of that, I was taken more seriously as a candidate for future opportunities. So yeah, it is this weird thing, but you shouldn't treat it any lighter than an animator because like you are still a huge part of the pipeline. What's funny is enough, DreamWorks had an event last night where they showed Megamind to us. And if you watch Megamind today when he's walking through the city, it's literally just Megamind. There's no other characters in the world. Versus if you watch like Puss in Boots when
Bad
he's
guys.
or the bad guys like in a city, there's thousands of people in the background and like that team really brings the film to life. So it is very important. And to treat it any less than you shouldn't. Now I get that you want to work on higher things and you eventually will, but like if as long as you keep that mindset like no, I am helping make this film the best it can be, it makes it a lot easier to kind of like not get the hero shots right away. And again, you're still animating, so you're getting tons of reps in, right? You're lifting that weight more in time. So when it comes to DreamWorks looking or Disney or Pixar looking for new people, you're already internal. They know that they like you. You're there already, right? And they've seen your work. And as long as they're liking what they see, it's going to be a lot easier for them to pull you in versus like if I applied at a new studio like Pixar tomorrow and you're already there, you're going to get looked at first because they know you. So that's, I think, a best way to think about it. Think of it as a stepping stone, as not as like a step down, I guess.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. I'm sure everyone does. And we have just two more questions. And the first one is by Jeff Guevara. Hi. Oh, sorry. How do you keep yourself motivated and fulfilled creatively when you get burnout or overwhelmed or when the work you're doing at work isn't fulfilling creatively? Thank you again for the talk and sharing your stories and experiences.
Yeah, that's a great question. Who you want to start or me? How do you want to go about this?
You go start. I started last time.
Okay. Yeah, for me, I think I've been getting better at this. It took me a while, but I've been trying to just do better about like hobbies. Um, I think this game is a balance. Like I don't think it's like you're gonna get burned out for sure. There's no like question about it. And I do think it's how you balance outside of that that helps you like stay sane in those crazy moments. So what Haley and I like to do is on our weekends we try to do stuff away from the screen. Actually, like we're big museum goers. I think we have memberships at multiple museums out here in Los Angeles. So like we're always going to the Academy or the LACMA. We just signed up to be a member at the Lucas one's opening close to us, so we just signed up for that. And there's a beautiful park out here called the Huntington Library, and so like we'll go out there and walk sometimes. But like the main thing is like let's get away from that because I do think you need a breath, right? Like you need breaks to help keep you sane because this job gets daunting, it gets busy, it gets frustrating, and it can sometimes be hard to stay motivated, especially in the crunchy times, like at the end of a production. No matter how good the production is, it gets busy, and like I don't think there's been a production in the world, other than a handful that have been on time or on budget. So it never smooth usually. So you know that storm is coming. Uh, but yeah, like I think, as for the fulfilling part, I try to again, I don't have as big of a problem with that because I do try to treat every shot with the same respect. And I'm just happy to animate. I think if, like if I was super into the story as much, I maybe that would be hard, but like if you've seen Ruby Gilman Teenage Kraken, that is not one of our best movies at DreamWorks at all by any means. You can see by the box office reaction, but I had a blast animating on that. And so I think try to just keep that in mind. It's like you are like getting to animate or you're getting to draw, and even if you're not as excited for the project, you're still like think about what you're doing. I guess that helps me stay motivated. Like I'm not, doing heart surgery or doing like a very laborious, intense job. I get to sit here and make a character come to life. And even though I'm like, the storyline's kind of weird here, I would change this. Like that isn't your job at that time. It's okay for you to give that feedback, but like your goal as a below the line artist, which is everything below actors and directors, right? Like you're there to help bring the director's vision true. And even if you maybe don't agree with that vision, you do need to work on getting past. I think that's a thing that every artist needs to work at. Like, hey, even though you agree, that's fine. You say your 2 cents and then you move on, because it's not your job to make that film like work in your brain how it's supposed to in your brain. It's your job to make their vision come to life. And so I think that's what helps me stay motivating on any sort of work that I maybe like. I don't think the story should have went this way, or like I think we should go darker here, or stuff like that. I'm like, it's okay. I said what I need to say, and sometimes you'll win those battles, and sometimes you won't. But your goal is again to just do your job to the best of its ability for that project. Um, and yeah, a mix of that for the creative side, and then just taking breaks, I think, is what helps me stay sane and keep motivated during the process.
Yeah. Just to build off what he said, I think one thing that is really hard for like even people our age, we might be a little bit older than some of the people in the room, but even people younger than us, I think there is a thing too that you have to retrain your brain a little bit, right? A lot of people within a specific age range were told you do X, Y, and Z, you will get this. And we are all learning that that is not true, right? You go to school or you learn this really cool skill, there'll be a job for you. That's not always the way it is. And so you have to really like break that idea. And so like when you have hobbies, right? Because I used to be a really bad proponent of this. Like we were perpetually told to hustle, right? You're hustling and hustling and hustling, and that's what ends up burning you out. And so like I have to actively when I have like a hobby I'm leaning into or something, I'm because in my head I'm immediately like, oh, maybe I can start selling this, or maybe I'll need to do another thing on the side because then, whatever side hustle for side, and then that just becomes another job. And so it's like really learning how to disconnect so you can actually rest and recharge because creative jobs are hard. A lot of people that aren't necessarily in the creative field don't think about it like that. They're like, oh, you're drawing pictures or you're making things like that. But it asks a lot of you to do that. And, like you're even saying, like if you're not super like fulfilled in that creatively to show up and be there for that thing that maybe doesn't speak to you exactly, that's really hard to do. So you have to learn how to like train your brain to kind of try to turn off, to not try to overthink like I want this hobby to then help me be better at my day job. Like actually just carving out even something small that's just for you that you just get enjoyment in. It may be playing games, it may be, gardening, it may be reading, it may be anything, but just actually allowing yourself to have a break and not try to keep continually working, I think is really important. And it's really hard to do. It took me a really long, and I'm still working at it. I actually kind of hate relaxing. Like I have to like force myself to do it. And that's why we started going to museums more because it's one of those spaces that does allow me to do that and just engage with the art there. And I enjoy that. So to me, that's a big part of trying not to burn out is actually, and like making that conscious effort to give myself. And it might just be for a little bit. Like maybe you can only do it for 30 minutes or an hour before, and then you build up more. But I think that's what's really important, especially in the world that we live in right now, everything's really fast. Everything, is like, how do you maximize your whatever, whatever, whatever? It's like, no, I need to be able to rest. Like, that's important, not just for you physically, but like for your mental health. Like, all of those things are super important because I think we watched a video a little while ago where it really does feel like when you get feedback as a creative, your brain literally like switches into like I'm gonna die. They hate all of the things I do. I will never be good enough, right? And so like you if your brain is constantly working in that way, you need to give it time to recharge. And so I think it's just you have to actively engage in not engaging. That makes sense.
Thank you. And just our last question from Gabriel Leal Aguilar. Thank you so much for giving this talk. I'm 31 and just broke into TV animation as a background artist. It's amazing, but I feel like it's going to be a one-hit wonder. There's not a lot of opportunities to connect with the people working on the show because everything is remote. Any advice on how to keep making connections and keep the fire alive?
Yeah, that
This doing
yeah,
things
I
like
think
this is important.
yeah,
Real quick, I just want to give a quick heads up. Our Zoom meeting does end at 11:30. So we only have a few minutes. I just wanted to give that
Yeah.
time frame.
Yeah, if you can just answer his question and then we'll sign off.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think like Haley said, things like this is very helpful. It is, I think with the remote stuff, it does make it a bit harder to build that connection, but like see if you can like kind of be like get a friend or someone that you like working with and try and do some of these on a smaller scale, like just chatting. Like Haley had a coworker that used to work at Naughty Dog that ended up leaving the company, but they had fun working
Co-worked.
together, and so now they do chats like this, just keeping up, and so like they've actually already reached out to Haley for possible projects in the future, just for like freelance and stuff. Haley's been so busy that she can't take it on, but it's just that's kind of how you should like build those connections in a more remote space, right, Haley? Like it's just kind of
Yeah,
like trying
I
to
know.
do more chats and stuff.
Yeah, it's those kinds of things. It's trying to find mentors, which I know is super hard. Like Gonzo has some amazing mentors. It's been harder for me because what I do is pretty particular and, so but like trying to create those connections, you could again, this kind of thing is great. There's depending on where you are, it may be harder. Like living in Los Angeles, there's like so many meetups, there's so many things. It is a little bit easier, but within COVID was both awful and good for like the remote situation, right? Because people are more comfortable jumping on a Zoom call, more doing a little bit more co-working. And so I think like the biggest thing is at the end of the day, a lot of this is about human connection and trying to find those moments. And so again, it's just really reaching out, really trying to, even if you're not busy now, like if they're saying like, oh, I'm too busy right now, try again in 3 months, try again in 6 months, those kinds of things. I just can't say it enough because truly where Gonzo is in his career is so much about those relationships he built with people. And he showed up, but it truly was about like, oh, he showed up, we're showing up for him. Like Sean, who's been his mentor for years now. He was his like big boss on his last film and like they still chat to this day. Like they get coffees and stuff like that. They built this really strong relationship and I think that that's a huge reason why he is where he is in his career.
Yeah. And what's now nice is you now know us. So connect with us on LinkedIn. If you have more
Yeah.
questions after this, reach out. Like, don't be shy about it. Like what Haley said, like I might be slow to get back because we are busy, but like now that you know us, you've built some sort of connection with us. Like, hey, I was at your talk. Boom. I'm like, oh yeah. And now we can start talking, right? But like reach out, reach out, reach out. That's the way you're going to build connections for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, both of you, for doing this. Thank you all for coming. The recording will be
Thank
up for those who
you.
couldn't make it or just want to watch Haley and Gonzo again. So again, thank you so much for being our panelists and we'll keep in touch. Hopefully we'll see each other in person in the future and all that. So good luck with everything.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for
Absolutely.
having us.
Bye
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.